have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Hi everybody, this is Gay USA, but we're in a different studio tonight because we had some technical issues. So you're going to have to look at both of us on camera throughout the entire show.
I won't be able to take my nap. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup. And in the news, the big headline is that the U.S. Supreme Court is delaying a little bit its conference on whether to take the marriage cases, the Defense of Marriage Section 3 challenges, the Prop 8 case, and the Arizona Benefits case. We'll give you the details on that.
It is official. The United States House of Representatives representatives will have its first out bisexual member, and other election wrap-up odds and ends we're going to give you.
After victory in 4 state ballot initiatives on same-sex marriage, which states will be next in the campaign for marriage equality?
And with the re-election of President Barack Obama, what's next on the federal agenda for LGBT rights?
Those darn heterosexuals, as Andy likes to say. I guess we'll say something about the straight people in the military at the highest levels who are proving to be a threat to national security.
May have to ban them.
Or complain about invasions of privacy.
Sure, no, we'll do all that.
We'll do all that.
Transgender rights in New York are being jeopardized by our traitorous governor, Andrew Cuomo. I know we're all supposed to like him because he got a same-sex marriage, but we look like we elected a Democratic majority in the state Senate for the first time in a bit, and he is not helping put together a Democratic leader for that. He's standing aside and saying he wants a coalition.
As various of them scuttle off to do business with the Republicans. But in better news, another big U.S. company has changed its policy so that it can stop giving money to the Boy Scouts.
The axis of evil, you remember them, the governments of Uganda, Nigeria, and the Vatican, are engaging in anti-gay bigotry to distract from their own failings.
'Twas ever thus. Yes. We will review, meaning Andy will review, the new Broadway production of The Heiress with Jessica Chastain and Dan Stevens, as well as Coleman Domingo's new Wild with Happy, Ethan Hawke in Chekhov's Ivanov, and a new play, which we both saw, about Richard Nixon's Checkers speech. And I saw the new musical version of Giant at the Public Theater.
Lots of theater.
Yeah.
Lots of theater. Let's start with the United States Supreme Court. We had told you that we expected them to sit down and decide whether they were going to take the marriage cases, California and the challenges to DOMA, on November 20th. That's now been moved to November 30th.
Yes.
And so this is where they sit and they decide whether or not to take cases. 4 justices say yes, we want to take the case. Doesn't necessarily signal how they're going to vote. 4 justices say yes, it goes on the docket. The earliest that they would announce about the marriage cases would be December 3rd, although they don't have to do it then.
That's an announcement about whether they're taking the cases,
right,
not a decision. That would probably not come till next June.
Probably.
And I have various conspiracy theories about the 4 conservatives will decide to take the California case
because
just so they can delay it.
Right, because our side, although not necessarily the lawyers in the case, but our side basically says, let the California existing decision stand. Don't take the case. People would immediately be able to get married, and gay people who want to marry people of the same gender,
right,
again.
Or anybody who wants to marry someone of the same gender.
That's true. We don't discriminate.
Exactly. Now, David Boyce, the lawyer on the Prop 8 case, stirred things up a little this week by saying he hopes the court takes the case. I'm not quite sure why, except that he maybe thinks it can expand the right to marriage beyond California.
Originally, Olson and Boyce, when they brought this case on behalf of AFER, the American Foundation for Equal Rights,
right.
They were hoping this was going to be our Loving v. Virginia, and this was going to declare a marriage right for gays from all eternity and all this other kind of stuff. But it's not.
So he's still playing that line.
But the appellate court in the California case trimmed that back a little bit. And, you know, these are unique circumstances to California.
Right.
California offers civil unions already, all the rights, but they don't offer marriage.
Which the federal courts in California said was discriminatory. If you're going to offer all the rights, you have to call it marriage for everybody, and that was the end of their decision.
And then the other thing that's happened since the election, or because of the election, is, of course, when we've been winning these DOMA cases, the latest thing we wanted at an appellate court level was that we are indeed a suspect class, that, you know, we should be given heightened scrutiny. And, of course, one of the things that's happened since then is we won 4 referenda on same-sex marriage. We prevailed, at which point the court could say, hey, they've got political power. They're not a totally powerless group. Look what they did, and they might use that against us.
Well, because one of the requirements for heightened scrutiny is that you not have political power and therefore need the courts to cast a jaundiced eye on any law that seems to discriminate against you. Now, I have always been a fan of just winning these cases on the rational basis, where we don't require heightened scrutiny of these laws. We simply look at them and say, there is no rational basis for these laws, and
right.
disallow them on that basis alone. But the lawyers don't want that because they want a higher standard for these laws.
They want a higher standard for all laws affecting gay people,
yes.
and that would help us in other
but,
circumstances.
So it has been pointed out that we may be undercutting the heightened scrutiny argument of the Supreme Court by winning these votes. Now, by the way, this is the first time anywhere in the world that a popular vote has been taken and won on marriage rights. Every other country in the world has done it either judicially or legislatively. This is the first time that we have won a popular vote anywhere in the world. And it's very controversial because ideally we would not be voting on what we consider a civil right, not something that should be a choice, but should be seen as a fundamental civil right.
And the only place that it is forbidden to vote on civil rights issues is the city of Washington, the District of Columbia, where they passed same-sex marriage, and of course the right wing wanted to bring a referendum, and the courts ruled, no, they don't have to do that because it's in your Constitution or your charter that you don't vote on civil rights issues.
Now, I thought Art Leonard, who is a legal professor and analyst in the New York City Gay City News, made an interesting point in discussing the marriage referenda wins, which is that the more states we have legalizing same-sex marriage, and we're now up to 9 with these wins, plus the District of Columbia, the more urgent it becomes for the Supreme Court to consider DOMA Section 3, because marriage equality is available in more of the United States, and therefore the federal government, by enforcing Section 3 of DOMA, is discriminating against more people in the United States.
Yes, and because we also travel to, now here's the thing, you travel to another state, you're married in New York, and let's say you get federal recognition of your rights, are you supposed to be treated as a married person all across the country in states that don't recognize it?
By entities of the federal government, yes.
And then it's an open question, by the way, whether, like people from, I always use the example of Alabama, who come up to Washington or some other place and get married, whether they would get their federal rights if they went back. I mean, that came up in the Edie Windsor case. It came in the Edie Windsor case, and it was not a settled issue.
It's not a settled issue because we still don't have any of the federal rights. So we have to establish, we have to get rid of DOMA Section 3 first, and then we'll see whether, in fact, that works.
It's a struggle.
But we are...
And people should understand that unless Olson and Boyce prevail and the court decides to be very expansive, there's not a strong chance of getting anything near our Loving versus Virginia, which struck down racial discrimination in marriage and forces the states to recognize these things.
Yes, we are not expecting from the Supreme Court any blanket mandate for legalization of same-sex marriage anytime soon. But we are celebrating these wins in Minnesota, Maine, Maryland, and Washington, and we thought you would enjoy celebrating with the residents of a couple of those states. So the first we want to show you is in Minnesota, where we beat the constitutional amendment. We have not legalized marriage in Minnesota, but we, for the first time, defeated a proposed state constitutional amendment that would have put into their state constitution a ban on same-sex marriage.
Except for Arizona, where we beat one back that banned marriage and domestic partnership. We got to give them credit until they then they did another one and they banned same-sex marriage.
But this was late at night in, well, about 11, 12 at night in Minnesota, when everybody's sitting around waiting for the results, and they think they're not going to get the results till the morning. And the leader of the campaign for marriage, for defeating the constitutional amendment, Richard Karlbaum, stands up to talk to everyone, to tell them it's going to take a while longer to get the results. And then there's a little surprise.
I couldn't be more proud to have a position to lead you guys for the last over a year. And I can't thank you enough for all your hard work and dedication. It's blown my mind. Every time that I feel like we're just about to hit a wall, you guys blow right through that wall to make this a reality. And so I want you to go to bed tonight. I want you to be very, very proud of the result we have.
That was a nice expression of joy, but they got even happier in the state of Maine, because that was where we actually won marriage equality by going to the voters.
We went to the voters.
Yes.
We said we want to get married.
So here's what happened with the result announcement in Maine.
It has been a long time in coming. That just makes what I'm about to say all the more sweet. Tonight, because of the work of everyone in this room and so many staff and volunteers and supporters all over the country, we have finally won.
When I said we want to get married, I mean, I didn't mean Ann and me. I mean, we've been able to do that since I was 17.
Not going to happen.
And not going to happen. Oh, well, you know, if you needed the benefits or something, I would
Stop.
consider it. All right. But, and if you, oh, by the way, I don't have the website for this, but you can just Google it. If you want to see how some people suffered through the election results, they have like a thing about white people mourning Romney. And they have pictures from around the country of people at various campaign sites with these grim expressions.
Well, we're actually going to get to something like that in a minute.
But let's stick with these states, because the marriage laws, you probably want to know, when are they going to go into effect?
Yeah.
And in Maine, December 6th is the earliest date that same-sex marriage can be recognized based on their formula. It might be a little later, but that's the earliest. In Maryland, it's January 1st, 2013. But although they don't think the marriages are going to actually go into effect until January 4th.
Because you have to get a license, and you can't get it on the 1st because it's a holiday, and then it takes 2 days to get into effect.
They may alter that and all
They may back it up.
All right. Washington State, it is December 6th. That's all referenda go into effect 30 days after the election. And
if the Supreme Court does reject the California Prop 8 case on December 3rd or shortly thereafter, then the Ninth Circuit in California mandates the putting into effect of their earlier decision, and people can get married in California.
Instantaneously.
Well, a few days after that is
All right.
mandated.
And who's next in this marriage fight? Should we go over that?
Sure.
Now? Well, I mean, so now that, all these 9 states and District of Columbia, what's next? Colorado is very likely, now they have a constitutional amendment against same-sex marriage, but their civil unions bill was blocked by their speaker, Frank McNulty, who's a Republican, and he lost his majority, and the speaker is now openly gay Mark Ferrandino, a Democrat. So that's likely, civil unions in Colorado.
Yes. And New Jersey, there's been some question about that because they had the court case years ago that mandated equal rights, but the legislature decided civil unions was enough.
And Governor McGreevey.
And that didn't work. And then the legislature passed marriage equality, and Governor Christie vetoed it. So then Garden State Equality went back to court and said, now you have to decide that civil unions are not enough. You said it had to be equal, so now you have to mandate marriage. And at the same time, they're going to go back to the legislature and try to override Christie's veto. But Stephen Goldstein, the head of Garden State Equality, said, we are not going to put this up for a vote. That is not right. We are not voting on civil rights. We will either win this in the court or we will win it in the legislature. We are not going to the ballot.
And I want to clarify about gay American Governor McGreevey. He was not there when they had the court decision. That was Corzine. McGreevey passed a limited civil unions bill and said it was a good compromise before that.
Now, the other states that say they may be exploring trying to vote on marriage
in the legislature
would, or a popular vote.
Really?
Yep. Indiana, Oregon, Illinois, California, Rhode Island, Minnesota. California would be repealing Prop 8 if it doesn't, the Supreme Court doesn't get rid of it. Rhode Island has the openly gay Speaker of the House, Gordon Fox, who has been reelected in a tough fight. He says he's bringing it up in January in the legislature.
And in Illinois, Governor Quinn supports it, and so there's a move to full marriage. They have civil unions.
Right.
And Delaware, the governor was Democratic governor reelected with 70% of the vote, Jack Markle, and they are also looking at transitioning from civil unions to marriage equality. He says it's inevitable. And even Ohio is looking at a ballot referendum on this to get rid of their constitutional amendment.
Well, we did reach a new plateau in this election, and therefore people are getting ambitious. Now, they may be getting a little too big for their britches on some of this, but...
because let's not forget, this was the Obama electorate this year. Well, it's a thing to think about.
And
more Democrats turn out in presidential years.
Yes, and people are saying, look, don't do this in 2 years in the next midterm election. Wait for the next presidential election.
Although our people may be getting more excited. I mean, and I've said to you, folks, you really do need to get engaged in every election.
Sure.
And when you vote in these off-year elections, you have a lot more power, and we've got to pay more attention to that. Now,
Valerie Jarrett, by the way, said that Obama was absolutely delighted by the marriage votes.
Who's Valerie Jarrett? She's the big presidential advisor.
She's the person who's really in charge of this country.
Domestic advisor.
And that he was thrilled by the election of Tammy Baldwin. I liked, did you hear this, the radio ad the Obama people were running just before the election?
I don't live in a swing state.
This was to appeal to young, straight women who we know were a good target for them.
Yes.
Telling them that they should vote on behalf for Obama to support their gay friends. Here's the text. What are you going to tell them? You were just too busy? You didn't think it mattered? Is that what you're going to tell your friends who can't get married? The ones who couldn't serve openly in the military? These are radio ads that Obama was running.
Good for him.
Absolutely.
He won.
Yeah.
And the biggest losers, of course, in the election was the religious right. And we are going to show you the report.
From the Christian Broadcasting Network, their little election roundup.
If you don't like us doing this, you sue us.
Well, I think actually they did a fine little job.
Okay, let's run that.
It was not a good night for supporters of traditional marriage. Voters in Maine and Maryland became the first to legalize same-sex marriage by a ballot measure.
And voters in Minnesota have rejected a constitutional amendment that would ban it. Heather Sells has the story.
4 states considered the issue of marriage on Tuesday. The question, would they continue a 32-state streak in which voters have consistently upheld traditional marriage? The answer, no. In Maryland, voters approved a new law legalizing same-sex marriage. In Maine, voters reversed themselves. Just 3 years ago, they voted against gay marriage. Last night, they approved it. In Minnesota, voters rejected a constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage, but a state law outlawing it remains. Washington state voters also considered a measure to legalize it, but results are still pending. Traditional marriage supporters acknowledge the battle was uphill all the way.
These are deep blue states, Washington, Minnesota, Maryland, and Maine, and the supporters of marriage were outspent roughly 8-1.
Maine and Maryland now become the 7th and 8th states to legalize gay marriage. This morning, traditional marriage activist Harry Jackson said the GOP should have done more.
The GOP basically said, you traditional church folks, you're on your own. We have a little bit in our campaign platform, but we're not going to fund you. We're not going to support you. And I think they lost the whole thing because of that lack of engagement and response on these issues.
The outcome of these votes could influence the Supreme Court. It will soon decide whether to take up cases that challenge the federal definition of marriage. And many believe that the court is watching, trying to determine whether public attitudes on this issue have shifted significantly. Heather Sell, CBN News.
And this just into the CBN newsroom.
Well, here we are. Yeah,
we're back. Okay. Well, they just announced that Washington State had passed marriage too.
Yay! We don't have tape. We don't have tape.
I love what Harry Jackson said, because that is exactly what we used to say about the Democratic Party, that they would not get involved in any of these votes about constitutional amendments, that they wouldn't support us. And now we have Obama running radio ads to straight young women saying, support your gay friends.
Brian Brown from the National Organization for Marriage is blaming Mitt Romney for not focusing on same-sex marriage, and Karl Rove for just pushing economic issues. And they're saying, well, we're going to have to raise more money. That's going to be their line for you suckers. Now, I know that some of our Christian right friends do keep up with the show to monitor what's going on. You are being played for suckers.
Just like I watch Huckabee on Saturday night sometimes.
But so, having lost here, and they think they can win again in the United States, and maybe they will.
They're not giving up.
They're not giving up, but right now,
any more than we did after our losses.
Well, and right now they're focusing on overseas, and the Starbucks boycott isn't working so well here, so they're going, for example, as Brian Brown says, in Qatar, in the Middle East. We're going to make sure that a price will be paid for this.
They're going to all these Middle East countries, and they're going to say, Starbucks wants to come into your country, but they are filthy heathens who support same-sex marriage. Don't let them into your country.
Starbucks is very popular over there, Brian. This is coffee we're talking about. It's a drug. They are not going to stop using it.
So some mixed results in other races around the country.
First, I also want to say there was exit polling on same-sex marriage, national exit polling, and it said 49% supported and 46% opposed.
Well, one thing that tickles me is the right wing has been saying, look, the way for us to win again is we got to go get that Latino vote, and they're a natural for us because they are socially conservative. They have missed all the polling over the last year that shows the Latino population supporting same-sex marriage, not to mention Catholics supporting same-sex marriage.
Often more times than a lot of other groups.
You're going to get a big surprise when you try to reach out to them.
Because,
All right, well, good news. Kyrsten Sinema did win the congressional seat in Arizona, making her the first out gay bisexual person in the House of Representatives and bringing to 7 the total of out LGBT people in the Senate and the House. Yippee! In North Carolina, 2 lesbians running for state senate lost their races. One of them, they were Susan Wilson and Deb Butler. One of them was the one who was called a big fat old dyke by the out-gay campaign aide to the Republican opponent. Right. That was too bad.
We can be our own worst enemies. In North Dakota, Joshua Boucher won his Fargo district out gay. This is the first openly gay person elected to the North Dakota legislature. And
well, there are a number. We now have out gay people in 40 state legislatures, and 7 of them are new, first-timers. Pennsylvania got its first out gay legislator. West Virginia, North Dakota, as you said, and New Hampshire has its first trans House member. Right. Stacey Lawton, Democrat, first out trans person to win a state legislature seat.
Did we do Ed Murray?
We have not.
He is the head. He is now. He's a senator in Seattle and Washington State senator, and he has been chosen to lead the state Senate chamber there.
We
and
now have.
He was and you know, he's not just gay. He's a gay leader who has been working on gay rights all his life.
We now have the leader of either the state Senate or the state House in Washington, California, Rhode Island, and Colorado.
We
and maybe Oregon
are taking over.
Well, we should also acknowledge, just historically, that the first out gay person to lead a state House was Alan Speer in Minnesota in 1972.
No, well, he was elected first in 1972.
He became the
speaker much later
on. Not much later.
Okay.
Somewhat later.
Yeah.
Anyway, bad news in Alabama. Roy Moore.
Oh, right.
Elected
10 Commandments in the courtroom, Roy Moore.
Yeah. Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Alabama.
We got a long way to go there, but you know, there's this new video online about how the South is going to rise again.
Oh, it's great.
You can Google it on YouTube. Google the South.
Southern Equality, is it?
Yeah,
I think
something along those lines. That they're ready to fight.
Yes.
And coming out in the South.
New
and all
energy
that kind of stuff.
all over the country.
And there was one viewer sent this wonderful quote about the election. You may have heard it by now. Gay marriage legalized on the same day as marijuana makes perfect biblical sense. Leviticus 20:13, a man who lays with another man should be stoned.
It's probably stoned to death.
Put to death, actually. Well, whatever. But, you know, bad news in 2 Kansas cities, Salina and Hutchinson. They repealed LGBT non-discrimination ordinances, after which the Secretary of State in Kansas, Chris Kobach, said those who don't like the state's conservative bent can move elsewhere.
Well,
that's very nice.
You know, the divide widens. But in Pinal County, Arizona, out gay Paul Babu, a Republican, was reelected sheriff there.
After he abandoned his campaign for Congress.
Yeah, because there was some question about his relationship with an ex-lover.
And in Janesville, Wisconsin, the hometown of Paul Ryan, they just voted November 12th to approve a measure extending domestic partnership benefits to city and library employees and their partners. 6-1 was the vote.
Wow. Troy, Michigan has recalled its mayor, Janice Daniels, who was famous for having said, I'm throwing away my I Love New York bag now that queers can get married there. Bye-bye, Janice.
Yep, they don't
she had
like
also been mean to city employees. And
we don't like that kind of talk.
No, we do not.
All right.
Unless it's among ourselves.
And then in New York, you know, the remaining big item on the agenda here is GENDA, which is the Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act. So, you know, we seem to have narrowly, it's not final, elected a Democratic majority here. Surprising, because
in the state Senate to go with the bigger majority in the New York State Assembly.
Where they've already passed GENDA.
Yes.
But the thing is...
repeatedly.
even though we've gotten bills to the floor eventually under Republican majorities in many cases, it takes an awful long time, and a Democratic majority would help with that. And now some Democrats are playing footsie with the Republicans with the blessing of the governor, Andrew Cuomo. And that's really kind of a disgusting spectacle. I mean, because people should have some confidence that when they vote for a Democrat, they're going to get the Democratic program and not somebody.
Not in this state.
New York is still a very backward political state. We tell you that.
So nationally, you may say, well, we're moving ahead. What do we want next? What are we asking for? We are asking for an out LGBT cabinet member as Obama reshuffles his cabinet.
And President Obama, we know you watch the show from time to time, that we want you to sign, the movement does, an executive order that would ban discrimination by federal contractors against LGBT people, because it's going to be tough, impossible in the Republican House to get the Employment Non-Discrimination Act passed, I assume.
Although if the Republicans were really smart, they'd say, look, the gay population, they're already a quarter of them voting for us anyway. We could get more of them if we passed ENDA. And some of them have voted for ENDA.
Yes, there are, but getting it, well, that's the thing. There will be, if the Democrats had control of the House, there would be Republicans who would vote for it.
Yes.
But they're not going to let it on the floor. But prove me wrong.
Yeah. And by the way, if you want to see a list of the results of lots of elections around the country with LGBT candidates endorsed by the Victory Fund, you can go to their political website, gaypolitics.com, to get the results of elections, wins and losses in 180 elections around the country at all levels.
And by the way, in New York, of the 4 Republican senators who voted for same-sex marriage, 1 didn't run, 2 lost, and 1, and Mark Grisanti in Buffalo prevailed. Yeah. So it kind of shows that, and gay people poured a lot of money into those races, but we don't really have the troops to protect those Republicans if they stick their necks out sometimes.
I'm going to digress here for a second, just because I see a note to myself. Those of you watching us on a free speech TV outlet on the Dish Network or DirecTV, free speech is going into its pledge mode in a couple of weeks that restricts our showings to just Saturday night at 11 o'clock Eastern Time.
So that's going to be true November 26th through December the 16th, I think?
Yes, so that will, so December 1st, 8th, and 15th will be the air dates in those weeks. You can also find us online at YouTube or Blip TV, or find the podcast at our website, gayusatv.org. We will continue to remind you of that. If you want to be on our mailing list for the details of updates on things like this, write to Andy Hum
at AOL.com. I'm the last one on AOL, but it's Andy Hum at AOL.com, and I will put you on the list.
And we'll keep you up to date.
Yeah.
Back to the news.
Okay. Well, let's see. Well,
I guess we could mention the scandal in the CIA, the military, and everything.
Yeah.
Do we really care?
Well, the Petraeus John Allen thing. I mean, the John Allen. I'm sorry. Is it? No.
Oh, it's General Allen.
Yeah, it is John Allen, the Afghanistan commander. Yeah. The scope of the depth at which these guys who were supposed to be focusing on our national security were focused on, these emails, these sexual emails with these women.
Allen has been pretty much exonerated of any kind of actual sexual relationship.
No. The original thing was like they might have been flirtatious emails. No, they were like phone sex emails, basically. Yes, that's come out by Fox. Fox exposed that. Yeah. Yes, they did.
Well, what I find shocking is the story in today's New York Times, as we tape on Wednesday. It is Wednesday, isn't it? Yes. About the lavish parties that all these commanders go to in Tampa, and the socializing that goes on. I mean, this Petraeus arrives at a party with 28 entourage members, just about. Not anymore. They are living some like Egyptian pharaoh life
general betrayed us. You know, there was an ad about that, and we took a lot of hell from the left when people did that. But this guy has betrayed us. The worst thing is that he became a celebrity.
Yes.
And he rolled Obama into doing a surge in Afghanistan, which killed many more thousands of people in Afghanistan on both sides of that conflict. That's the real scandal here, is that this guy was incompetent. And Obama made him head of the CIA anyway. You know, come on.
Not anymore.
Oh, but look at who they're looking at for cabinet appointments. I mean, yes, we'd like a gay, but look, they're talking about Erskine Bowles for Treasury. For God's sakes! I mean, these aren't progressive people. How about it?
Yeah.
Barack.
Well, you know, we didn't get a lot of progressive stuff out of Bill Clinton either. The whole thrust of the Democratic Party is very centrist.
It's outrageous.
And accommodationist.
It's outrageous. Then
still better than the Republicans.
Speaking of Fox News, a reporter for Fox 19 Cincinnati, Tricia Mackey, referred to Rachel Maddow as an angry young man, and then was when she was criticized, she defended herself, saying, "You're right. I'm sorry. I should have said antagonistic." She didn't change the other thing. So GLAAD got on her case, and she issued one of those non-apology apologies.
The mayor of Philadelphia and LGBT pioneers broke ground for an LGBT-friendly, affordable senior housing complex. 6 stories, 56 one-bedroom apartments at South 13th Street between Spruce and Locust.
Yep.
We are looking forward to moving in a minute.
I'll move to Philadelphia. You want some more good news?
Sure.
The UPS Foundation has dropped the Boy Scouts, and they were big donors to the Boy Scouts, $167,000 a year. But the point of it is they're saying if the group that we're giving to doesn't comply with our non-discrimination policies, we're not giving them money, and that's a good way to go about this.
That's what they did. They looked at their policies and they adjusted it a little and said any people we give money to have to meet our standards, and that disqualified the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
In Deerfield Beach, Florida, a teacher has filed an EEOC complaint. She was accused by the parents of a student of turning the student lesbian. She's a straight woman.
If only it were so easy.
Yeah. You know, she was supportive of the student when the student was struggling with coming out, and the parents decided to blame her, and then the school cleared her. But the investigation was so tough that she's accusing them of bullying her, causing her medical problems, ruining her career. So we'll follow that case.
Here's a story everybody's heard about. Elmo turned gay this week. And when it was revealed, well, there was an accusation against Kevin Clash, who is the voice of Elmo and also a big director at the Sesame Workshop, and was accused. Well, the accusation was that he had sex with an underage guy, and he said, I did not. It was whatever I had with this guy was consensual and adult, and it was borne out. The guy retracted his story, but he was suspended by.
Well, he took a leave of absence,
well,
a voluntary leave of absence to deal with it. And
well, they said that he violated company policy regarding internet usage.
Yes,
which is a technical way of going about it. But you know, everybody jumped on him and didn't wait till the facts came out.
Well, I think there's a debate. Technically, the young guy was of age, and then are you fine with relationships with a big age disparity or not?
I'm fine with fine. I think we don't have any right to criticize anybody who's having a legal relationship with a legal adult. You want to disapprove of it, you know, a little, you know, all right. But I mean, Gary Studs, when he was censured by the House, said, I had a consensual relationship with a page, and I did criticize him because I said, even though the guy was of age, you had power over him. And I don't know what the relationship was here with this,
we don't know
young
who
man.
the young man was.
But it's nice to know Elmo's gay.
I thought we did know that.
Was he out before?
I think so.
All right.
Well, I'm not sure about
that.
Then
again, there's the North Metro pastor. This is out in Minneapolis, who had a ministry devoted to helping people put their homosexuality behind them. Well,
ex-gay counselor.
Yeah, he's charged on 8 felony counts of 4th-degree criminal sexual misconduct. His name is Ryan Muehlhauser, 55.
Lakeside Christian Church, because he's been accused of molesting a couple of those young men he was counseling for a couple of years.
And then the Anti-Violence Project in New York has brought to our attention a horrible story of gay domestic violence that ended in murder. This was the guy who was killed was Sean Wolford, who was a very beloved hairdresser, but killed in his Brooklyn apartment by his, partner he was trying to get rid of, yes, yeah. Devonil Brown.
If you have any questions about domestic partner violence or partner violence, you can contact the Anti-Violence Project at avp.org. It's a very overlooked and common problem and something that needs to be paid more attention to.
We mourn the loss of a young man, activist in the community, Brandon Lacey Campos, who was a prolific writer and activist. He was the co-executive director of Queers for Economic Justice, only 35, HIV positive, out about it, all that kind of stuff, did a lot in the movement, and sadly passed at a very early age.
In Texas, a prison inmate has pled guilty to the hate crime assault a year ago of a fellow inmate, and that's going to be one of the first federal convictions on a hate crime charge.
The Human Rights Campaign says they've got good news for us about corporate America standing with us. They've published their Corporate Equality Index, and it shows a record 252 businesses achieving the top rating of 100%. Is that great inflation? No, it means that they're cooperating with all the policies.
Well, they have a written list of standards that people have to meet.
And they said when they started this 11 years ago, there were 13 businesses that had 100%, so we are making progress in that area.
And a lot more businesses, including more than half the Fortune 500, now have non-discrimination policies that include gender identity and expression.
You have to if you want to get 100%.
But you can get the whole list of companies by going to hrc.org/CEI for Corporate Equality Index. Now, HRC has announced some of its goals in the upcoming term and administration. They're going to focus on trying to get the Employment Non-Discrimination Act advanced, although we're, with the Republican House, that's a problem. Some way to equalize benefits to same-sex couples in the military or same-sex partners of military members, because the Defense of Marriage Act is still being used as a way to prevent those benefits from being equalized. Tax equity they want. They think that can be done administratively. And they also want to establish on their own part a municipal equality index. They're going to establish a list of 130 cities and towns and look at their individual non-discrimination policies, benefits for city employees, things like that, and establish a list. I'm surprised they haven't done it yet.
With their $40 million.
Well. So that you could look at their list and see what cities and towns have the best policies for LGBT residents and employees.
That would be helpful. Yeah. Share your information.
And speaking of information, the International Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission announced that in the storm, the Hurricane Sandy, their basement was flooded. They lost 22 years of records, which is a history of the movement worldwide.
Oh, God.
A lot of
you live in New York. Get it out of your basement.
Well, a lot of LGBT organizations had offices downtown and had problems with
they're still out of their offices because it's not just that the floodwaters have receded, but their electrical systems were destroyed essentially by the salt water. Good news from San Francisco, where they are moving towards covering gender reassignment surgery. They're calling it a symbolic process. They have, the city already does it, but they're talking about this health plan, this Healthy San Francisco thing that they have. They want to make it happen for transgender people because they're saying for some people don't want surgery, but for some people it is essential, and therefore it needs to be covered. So they are working on that.
And by the way, next Tuesday, November 20th, is the annual Trans Day of Remembrance, which is dedicated to honoring all the transgender people who have been murdered at disproportionate rates in this country and around the world.
Absolutely. And in Salt Lake City, well, I'm sorry, it's in Davis County, which is just near there. The ACLU is suing the school district because they took a book that has some gay themes. It's called In Our Mother's House, and they said at the Windridge Elementary School, and they said if you want to look at this book, the kids want to look at this book, they need parental permission. And they're saying
it was on the library shelves. Some parents objected. And the school said, oh, okay, we'll put it behind the desk, and people will have to request it and get permission.
And that stigmatizes our issues. And
you think?
You should, well, look, it's not that it's that easy anywhere in the country to still have discussions about these things.
It's a very mixed
in classrooms,
bag.
I mean.
We have many successes, but we must push teaching our existence and history and everything else, because that's going to be the next leap forward.
Right.
Thank you to President Obama, who has nominated a new batch of federal judges, including out-gay African-American Judge William Thomas, to the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida. He would be the first out-gay black man who's a federal judge. Deborah Batts was appointed by Clinton 20 years ago. She, in fact, is now in semi-retirement, but she was the first out black lesbian federal judge.
You know, one of the big questions in the country is whether the U.S. Senate will change its rules to stop the cloture rule, essentially the filibustering, where you're going to get 60 votes on everything to get it to the floor, which has prevented a lot of these judges from being confirmed. On the first day of the Senate session, and by the way, there are a lot of liberal senators who want this, where you just have to have 51 votes to pass something. But they could change the rules. And
we'll try to follow that.
Yes.
And a strange little development in the Bradley Manning case. You may remember him as the out gay or trans military man who's accused of leaking a lot of materials to WikiLeaks. He entered a guilty plea to some of his actions, but not in a deal with the prosecutor, but he's trying to establish something about a record of cooperation to try to get a lighter sentence. So this case is slowly moving forward. We're on his side, or I am anyway.
I am too.
Because he's a hero.
Did a great service to the country.
Trying to illuminate what's going on with the military.
Right. He started the whole Arab Spring, for God's sake. Now, depending on how you feel about that, but I mean, at least it's people at the grassroots taking some power.
All right, international news.
Well, more bad news from Africa, where Uganda is once again threatening to do their Kill the Gays bill, and it hasn't changed that hardly at all. It is still,
I suspect this is more bluster on their part.
No, the Speaker wants the law as a Christmas gift.
Yeah, they've said this before.
And then in Nigeria, they are making progress or regress on passing their bill, which is heinous. I mean, it has things like 10 years imprisonment for a person who operates a gay club.
At least it's not the death penalty.
People who witness a bet or the solemnization of a civil union or gay marriage, 10 years in prison. I mean, it means if you go to one. Now, you know, again, these countries are all in political trouble. This plays to the cheap seats.
It's the distraction from the really serious trouble going on in these countries. And unfortunately, in Malawi, where we told you last week that the Justice Minister had announced a suspension of anti-gay laws there, he said, never mind. We're not suspending the anti-gay laws.
And the Vatican says, yeah, you're going to go with all the same-sex marriage stuff? The Vatican was reacting to the passage of the stuff in the United States. Why not contemplate freely chosen polygamy? And of course, not to discriminate, polyandry. The church is introducing a lot of new words into our vocabulary.
In Jamaica, 2 male students were caught having sex in a bathroom at the University of Technology. A mob attacked them. One of them escaped. The other was brutally beaten by the security guards who had been called in to deal with this situation. There was a video of this posted, but YouTube took it down because they said it violated their rules against shocking and disgusting videos. The guards have been fired. That's about it.
Well, the new Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, says...
Well, better than the
previous guy,
Yeah.
who also
No, the guy who we thought was going to be appointed.
Oh, right. But he says no same-sex marriage, but absolutely no truck with any form of homophobia in any part of the church. Well, that would include at the altar rail for marriages,
Yeah.
you know?
How do you define homophobia? All right, better news. A British court says that the Catholic Care Adoption Agency must work with same-sex parents or lose its charity status.
And some of you may have been following this whole controversy with the BBC over, but the new case was, having not reported on one guy who was screwing around with kids, they did report on another guy, and it turned out that he didn't do it. So he's suing them. But I want to give credit to the Prime Minister, David Cameron, a conservative, because he held a press conference and he said, hey, take it easy. He said, you're just, because people were speculating on who this Tory that molested somebody 30 years ago was. He said, a lot of them are just gay, and you're just gay bashing. I mean, I thought that was progress.
Nice. The Bermuda governor will introduce a Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Equality Act. Uruguay
Isn't that where Bloomberg goes? Is it Bermuda?
Yes. You think he's
to
financing?
see his boyfriend?
He said it.
Oh, we've said it. Come on, we've said it for 12 years on this show.
Uruguay will debate legalizing same-sex marriage. They already have civil unions. Brazil just held its first Black LGBT conference. And the UN Committee Against Torture in Geneva held a hearing on complaints of homophobia in Russia.
Yes.
Violence against gay people, forced sterilization of transsexuals, discrimination. And the Russians showed up and they said, we have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's just too much.
But luckily, the committee said, you are lying.
Yeah.
I don't know whether anything will come of it.
All right.
Yeah, and the New York Times did a fascinating piece on gay people in Pakistan.
Yes.
A week or so ago. Look
Google
that
it.
up. Yeah, it's really good.
AIDS news. Well, we told you the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors passed a thing that you got to wear condoms in porn, and they have the porn industry is big there. So they've got something, the porn industry's got something called the Free Speech Coalition, not to be confused with Free Speech TV, that says they believe the law is unconstitutional, and we will take our industry out of your town if you make us put a condom on.
Larry Flint says we'll go to Cabo for 10 days.
Well,
and Pasadena, which is part of LA County, says we're not going to enforce this law. Bring your
what is wrong with
industry
what
here.
is wrong? Of course, they're claiming that no one, they're like, no one has gotten HIV from porn that they do,
Well, they claim that if everybody in the country did as much testing and oversight as they do, as frequently as they do, and paid as much attention to it as they do, that the entire country would be in better shape.
But actually, they do have a system where they actually have to show each other their latest test results to each other. This is something we could all do.
Look, it's better than nothing, but as we all know, first of all, anything like that could be faked. But test results are, what are you testing? Antibodies that don't show up for 6 months after infection?
Right. Especially when you're a porn star, when you have a lot of sex.
Exactly.
Right.
But I also believe the virus is less prevalent in the population than it used to be, but it's still out there.
So I saw the movie Lincoln, and I do recommend it. It's mainly about the passage of the 13th Amendment banning slavery. I didn't know that because I hadn't read the reviews, but I liked the movie pretty much. It's really quite moving in many parts, and there is a sort of gay scene. I have to say I was expecting a little more from Tony Kushner during the screenplay. We could have had a little roll in the hay for him, but Steven Spielberg did not put that in. Maybe Tony Kushner didn't put that in.
I saw Skyfall. Flat, did not enjoy it.
What about the gay scene in that with Javier Bardem?
Oh, he's a little creepy gay, but he pulls back. Yeah, there's a little implication.
And Daniel Craig says there will never be a gay James Bond because he's not gay. But, people come to different understandings of themselves, Daniel.
I still miss Sean Connery.
Well.
All right. You saw a lot of plays.
Well, I certainly want to recommend The Heiress with Jessica Chastain and David Strathairn and Dan Stevens. It's a very good rendering of the play. She's, you know, she
was great in The Help.
People see her in the movies all the time, but she has a long stage history.
Yeah.
And she does a very good job with that play. I saw, where are we? Ivanov. This is a Chekhov play that I'd never seen. Yeah. I've seen the others about 5 times each.
Yeah.
And it's with Ethan Hawke at the Classic Stage Company. 3 hours watching a depressive deteriorate on the stage, and he does a terrific job. I mean, he just throws himself into this. It's an absolutely amazing performance, and it's a nice small theater, and you can get a good close-up view of Ethan Hawke falling apart. It's also got a very good supporting cast as well, directed by. How did you like Checkers, about the Nixon Checkers speech?
Tell them why you're asking me that.
Because we went together, and I really went because you wanted to see it.
Sure.
But it's by Douglas McGrath, who wrote the Truman Capote movie. You know.
I have an endless fascination with Richard Nixon because I am of that age, and I watched every single minute of the Watergate hearings.
So this was Anthony LaPaglia as Nixon and Catherine Irby as Pat. Now I want to say, we saw this in a snowstorm the day after the election. What did you do on election night? You stayed up all night like we did, and I was pretty tired. Now, if a play is good, it wakes me up.
Yeah.
I have to say, I apologize, but it put me to sleep.
Well, I stayed awake through the whole thing.
Good for you.
And I did not enjoy the play. But the one thing I did enjoy in the play is the Checkers speech, which is just fascinating. But
for those of you who don't know, Richard Nixon was accused of taking funds, having a personal slush fund, basically.
From donors and using it inappropriately.
Right.
And he had to go on TV to defend himself, or Eisenhower was going to drop him from the ticket.
And Checkers was the name of his dog, and he said he wasn't going to give up his dog.
His daughter's dog. Given by a donor. But if you want to see the Checkers speech, which you should watch it on YouTube. You can Google Richard Nixon Checkers speech and find it there, and then you don't have to go see this play.
And you can see Pat in her Republican cloth coat.
Exactly.
All right. Now, I also saw, we love Coleman Domingo.
Yes.
And he wrote a new play called Wild with Happy. And, you know, I certainly found a lot of it very funny. It deals in a lot of racial stereotypes. He's an African-American, and stereotypes about gays as well. He plays a gay character as well, and there's an even more, we're running some of the pictures of it there. But I gotta say, Coleman, the theater was an icebox, and I was told on the way out by the usher that that's the way the actors want it. I think that's theater of cruelty. And I don't think that should be done.
Poor Andy.
No. I mean, you shouldn't make the. We're not allowed to. We're not allowed to move around like you do.
But the funny thing was, it wasn't the whole theater, because you
apparently
talked to someone else there.
I talked to some people who said that they were okay.
Yeah.
But you know, and I've got a nice layer of fat on me, but I was very cold.
And this isn't an official review, but I saw Giant at the Public Theater, the new musical, and man, is that flat. Yeah. I would not recommend that.
3 hours of that.
3 hours of pointlessness. Pointless.
Well.
See, rent the movie.
With
Elizabeth
James
Taylor, James Dean,
gay.
Rock Hudson.
A gay.
All right. Well, Free Speech viewers, Saturday night, 11 o'clock only on December 1st, 8th, and 15th. Watch for that week.
Yes.
Write to Andy Hum at AOL.com for details.
You can get us online. You can get us through a podcast.
We'll be back in our regular studio next week, and we will see you then.
For Thanksgiving.